Hello everyone, Jeff here for Respawn Studios with my top 10 Xbox games of 2017. Now, I have not played every single game. For example, I've just bought Wolfenstein 2, which I haven't had time to play yet. But I have played over 100 games this year, so this is my opinions for the top 10 best games that I have played, again, just on Xbox One in 2017. To kick off, we have an indie game called KONA. I believe it came out in March of this year. I think it was actually out on Steam or PC in general last year, but it came to Xbox this spring. You play a private investigator in Canada, and you are asked to look into, I think, a theft case by this older gentleman. And as you arrive at the cabin, not only is this storm going on, but the person that you're supposed to meet, you find his dead body. So you have to find out what in the world is going on. There is some combat in the game. There is some driving. You might be driving into a fence like I did right there. There are some puzzles in the game. Right here, I'm heading toward the junkyard where you have to put together a snowmobile. My favorite thing, though, is just the atmosphere of the game. You have to keep track of how warm you are, so you have to be around fires or be inside of buildings to recover your heat, which I thought I would actually not like, but I ended up actually liking that. It helped you kind of get into the game. There are these supernatural elements. So here I'm getting this vision of what happened to these people in the kind of barn at this junkyard, and you get these cool visions. There are definitely weird supernatural elements with the things you encounter, especially at the end of the game, but it's a really cool story and I like how they present it, so I would highly recommend KONA. I think it's only $20. All right, moving on to number 9, maybe my only controversial choice, Destiny 2, because if you follow the subreddit, it's nothing but people hating on the game. But I think that's because a lot of the hardcores played the heck out of the game, and there was not really a lot to grind for. They removed strike-specific loot. There aren't quite as many guns. A lot of the guns are just easily obtainable now with a new token and mod system. But I just simply enjoy playing the game. I don't know what it is. I've already put over 25 days of playtime in the game. I think I've beaten the campaign over 20 times. I just really enjoy the co-op aspects of the game, especially the new raid that they added. I think is their best one yet. Everyone has to be doing their job well. It's all about communication, and I really like the intensity of that. There are 5 strikes, which I wish there, of course, were more, but that's how many launched in the first game, so I guess it's kind of understandable. There were 9 multiplayer maps at launch, but I think there's 11 now that they've added one from Iron Banner and one from Trials. The kind of strange thing is that there's only 2 multiplayer playlists right now, quick play and competitive. But I'm not a big multiplayer person in Destiny. I personally have always found it very unbalanced and more stressful than fun. But still, I play the heck out of Destiny. I love just how well refined it feels in the gunplay and the standard exploration. It just feels good. I just enjoy playing it, especially with friends, even doing public events. There are new emblems that track different stats, like how many heroic public events you've completed, how many competitive playlist wins you have, how many heroic nightfalls you've done. A lot of little touches like that I enjoy. And the first DLC actually comes out a week from today, The Curse of Osiris, so I'm really looking forward to that. Now, I know a lot of people, again, don't like the game. They removed a lot of the grind aspects, but for what it is, I love it. I was a big Destiny 1 fan too. Okay, moving on to number 8, Outlast 2. Again, I know a lot of people didn't like Outlast 2 as much as the first one, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game. Outlast 1 is just, to me, one of the top 10, if not top 15 all-time best games. Outlast 2 is really good. It's not quite that good, but I love it. Here is one of the 2 main parts of the game. You're either in the moment in Arizona, where you play a investigative journalist looking for your wife, or you are in these sequences, which to me are infinitely more terrifying and often better, where you're in a school. You're in these flashback sequences, finding out the memories of what happened leading up to the horrible moment you find yourself in Arizona with this very messed up religious cult. So here is this creature that I'm running away from. Again, these are the scariest parts of the game to me. You still have the camera. There's no way to fight back, which is one of the hallmarks of Outlast, hence the name. You don't play anyone that like knows what they're doing in a fight. You're just playing people that are journalists. So you have a camera and you have to hide or just run away. So it's about survival. You always have to be on your toes. It kind of induces a lot of anxiety that way, but in a good way. That's kind of the whole point of the game. You outlast, you find out the truth, and do what you have to do to survive. So again, this is only one of the many sequences at the school, but a large part of the game is actually in Arizona, in different mountain and wilderness settings, trying to find out more on the cult and locate your wife. So you can turn night vision on and off. You have to manage your batteries. Again, very much like the first game, if you're familiar with that. I think both games are $20. I think Outlast 2 is $30. But to me, it's worth it. Yes, it's a short game. It only takes like maybe a few hours to beat, but it's worth it. It's a very unique experience. It's something that I think is very much I don't know what else to say other than it's worth it. It's a very unique kind of game. If you played the first game, the DLC is one of the most messed up things ever. It's just something you don't really get in other games. How they present the story, how it feels to be so powerless. It's just a very unique setting, and I think they accomplish it very, very well. Okay, moving on to number 7. This is yet another indie game. This is Tacoma, the second game from the makers of Gone Home. In this game, I know a lot of people, again, criticize this subgenre, the walking simulator, which is what it's often referred to as. I could not love it anymore. I love walking simulators. I think this is one of like the peaks of gaming to me. It's kind of an interactive novel. You go around, you solve these puzzles, you find out these really cool stories in a way you can't really experience it in a book. It allows you to kind of be put in the shoes of the characters, hear their voices, interact with things. It's just a very cool experience. Now, Tacoma, the setting, again, I'm not going to try and spoil too much, but there will be some slight spoilers for what I show for other games. So I just wanted to show some really cool sequences from them. But Tacoma, you play a woman being called to a ship to investigate what happened to the crew. And you find that out through these kind of neon-looking skeleton things of the crew. You go through their video logs, and you're finding out about who they are as people, what was going on. You read different journal things. And it's actually a really disturbing story. There are a lot of human elements here. You could read text messages. You find out codes and things for lockers this way. But it's actually a pretty messed up story, and I think it's more than worth experiencing. Again, it's an indie game. It's fairly cheap. I think it's only $20 as well. The campaign will only take you about maybe 2.5, 3 hours, but it's fantastic. Now, talking about fantastic and another indie game from a well-regarded studio, this is Observer, clocking in at number 6. This is the second game from the group that made the horror game Layers of Fear. This is also a horror game, but it's a very different kind of thing. Instead of being set in a house where you're the very messed up artist from Layers of Fear, this is very much in the future. I think it takes place in the 2200s, I think they have it set up as. And you're a special kind of cop that you're an observer. You, again, kind of like Tacoma, go in and find out like memories. You get these things about what happened to people. A lot of people are infusing themselves with a lot more technology and blurring the line between human and not human. So you go through these murder investigations, trying to find clues, evidence, what's happening. Is there a serial killer? Is there something paranormal going on here? You see, this is actually very near the end of the game. You're encountering this kind of thing that looks like, what was that game, System Shock? The big AI with the flowing wires from it, and you're having this conversation. But it's a very cool game. There isn't combat. Again, it's more of the, quote, walking simulator, but it's a damn good one. Speaking of walking simulators and indie games, you might be noticing a trend here. This is number 5. What Remains of Edith Finch. Now, I was more than happy to be able to get this on PC when I got a new computer in May, but I was even more ecstatic when it came to Xbox because I'm a big achievement person. I actually have a guide up on the channel to get all the achievements. It's not too difficult. This actually comes from one of my achievement guides to look through all of the peepholes in the game. This is another game that will only take you about 2 to 3 hours, but the reason this is so high up on the list, this is even in my top 25 games of all time. You see all of these top 5 will now be. The variety in gameplay is absurd. I've never played any major release game that has such a variety in gameplay. Every memory sequence for a different member of your family is different. Like one is a kind of comic book cartoon. One you play as animals, including an octopus. One you play as an owl, and you have to pick up. It's crazy. Every part of the game is very unique and different. And it's all about these strange stories about your family. Are they true? Are they hyperbole? Are they just these over-the-top accounts? And you have to find out. This is one really cool sequence where you control one thing with the right thumbstick and another with the left thumbstick. You have to kind of manage the two stories at once. It's just so awesome. There is no game I've played like this. I know, again, it's a walking simulator. It's $20 for just a couple hours of gameplay, but it's so unique and it's so enjoyable. I would definitely recommend, especially if you are not into other walking simulators, I think this would be a good gateway into them. This is What Remains of Edith Finch. You play as the daughter of this family coming back to your family house and trying to come to terms with your really bizarre family. Okay, moving on to number 4 is Evil Within 2. I enjoyed the first game. It was pretty cool, managing your inventory, worrying about how much ammo and supplies you have. In Evil Within 2, everything is better. I actually just got this on the Xbox sale last week, so I just was finishing this game yesterday, but it's so good. Instead of just the upgrade system, you can now have all of these upgrades to your weapons. You can craft more ammunition. You can even craft when you're out in the world, but it will cost you more supplies. There are several different difficulty settings, which is nice for a horror game. If you just want to experience the story, you could play on easy. If you want to really, really make it hard, rarely ever find supplies, have to have it be a kind of stealth game as opposed to an action game. You could do the harder difficulties. There's a really good balance between exploration and combat. There's a good balance between stealth sequences and action sequences. It just feels like they knew what they were doing. Every chapter of the game is bizarre. Again, it's a horror game. It's pretty scary, but it's also unique in that there is a variety of settings. You are in this kind of mind plane, essentially. If you played the first game, you know that they were doing these experiments on mental patients, trying to understand and access things, and you're trying to kind of make things right in this game. You're trying to find your daughter and your wife. So you're going through this kind of simulated town, and people are manipulating the reality there. Things are upside down. There are these creatures. There's these strange things that you don't really understand that have come out of control of the corporation that was trying to kind of have a hold on the world. And it's just a very enjoyable experience, especially if you're into horror games. Now, moving on to number 3, your jaw might have already dropped. I know mine did. This is Assassin's Creed Origins. Now, I don't even have a 4K capture card, so this is just 1080. But on Xbox One X with HDR and 4K, this game is absurd. It's even absurd without that. It looks so good, and the game world is absolutely humongous. I think there's something like 26 districts, and they're all fairly big. They're all like, could be, if you put like 4 of these together, that would be a fairly good game size, but there's 26 of them. It's crazy. You could ride a horse. You could fast travel to the places where you've done the points of interest and the tops of towers and things. There's different tiers of weapons. You can upgrade your pouch, how many arrows you could hold, how much damage your hidden blade does. You can hunt animals and get all their different pelts to do the upgrade. There's this very complex tree. So you see I have a lot of stuff invested in the warrior tree. You can level up. There's 40 levels in the game. It's just awesome. I know a lot of people were turned off from Assassin's Creed with Unity because it had a lot of issues, or Syndicate. People thought it wasn't that great. Assassin's Creed Origins is great in every way. They've simplified the combat and the running. You don't have to hold down right trigger to engage actions anymore. You're just constantly running. So you could just run forward onto a wall. The combat, you have this meter now where you could have this kind of overdrive, which I'm going to do right here to show you that. And just everything feels smoother. It's just more enjoyable to play all around. And I've been a huge Assassin's Creed fan. Assassin's Creed 2 is one of my all-time favorite games, but now this is up there too. It's so enjoyable. The campaign is really cool. It's you and your wife trying to bring down these people that murdered your child. It's just a fantastic experience all around. Now, speaking of fantastic experiences, this is another indie game, the last indie game on my list. Number 2, Life is Strange Before the Storm. Now, this is the second Life is Strange game. It's actually a prequel, hence the title, Before the Storm. You play as the second main character from the first game, Chloe. Now, this game had a lot of controversy because the voice acting strike was going on. So actually a different woman is the voice of this iconic character. And a lot of people were put off by the first trailer because they thought it just sounded so different or bad. We have all been proven wrong. She's incredible. Every voice actor for every character in this game is so good. Again, this is a game that's only a few hours long. It comes out in episodes. Episode 3 isn't even out yet, or this might be number 1 on my list. The first 2 episodes are out. What sets this game apart is it's so human. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's so much more of an experience than a game. It's not, oh, it's a high school simulator. No, it's fantastic. All of the characters feel like they're real people. Every big decision you make has consequences. You can see them. Unlike the first game, there's no way to rewind and change your decisions. You have to live with the consequences. It's so good. And on top of all of that, the most famous part of the game, and rightly so, is the soundtrack. In the first game, they had a group called Sid Matters pick the songs, and they even had a couple of their own songs in the soundtrack. It was so cool, like introducing you to all of these indie groups. In the second game, a slightly even more known indie group called Daughter, a British group, was in charge, and the soundtrack is incredible. Now, moving on to number 1, Resident Evil 7. Now, this is the longest section of the game, of course, because it's number of this video, of course, because it's number 1, but also because I want to address why is this number 1 for a few different reasons. One of the big debates I've seen this year is, oh, content. I don't want to pay $60 and the game is only a couple-hour campaign. Or that's like the big complaint with people have with Destiny. Oh, there's only like 300 hours of gameplay for $60. Okay, shut up. If a game is good, I would pay $60 or whatever the price is of that game. If it's a good game, I want it. I'm not going to pay like $1,000 for a game, but $60, like, come on. That's less than a pair of shoes. That's like going out to dinner once a week. Like, what are you saying? Resident Evil 7 is one campaign. It's only, for me, 8 hours the first time you beat it. There's even an achievement and stuff you unlock for beating it in under 4 hours. But it's so good. It's a first-person horror game. I know a lot of people were freaking out that Resident Evil is moving on to that when the last few games were criticized for being third-person action games. Like, oh God, they're just doing something different again. It works so well. The combat is great. You have to manage your ammo. It's very hard on the hard difficulty settings. When you finish it on the very hard difficulty setting, you unlock unlimited ammo, which then makes subsequent playthroughs a lot different. But it is very scary. It's very well paced. The characters are unforgettable. This whole family that you run into on this plantation is so messed up. The mom, the dad, the son, you're not going to forget them. There's a lot of different experiences, not just in one house, as you might think by the demo or the previews. There's a few different places to go, but I'm not going to spoil what all of them are. there are a few different videotapes you could put in a VCR, which is what we're in right now. And they're these kind of memory sequences. One is like a paranormal investigation show. This one is what happened to a guy that was captured by the family and is being tortured, kind of like this Saw game. He's trying to escape, but you're supposed to put this candle on a birthday cake, but the sprinkler keeps coming on when you go into the room, so you have to find a way to get around that. So you end up burning this doll. You get a finger. There's this thing with this mannequin where there's a thing with a balloon that blows up and puts a spike through your hand. There's all of these crazy elements of the game, and it's just so scary. There's nothing else like this. It's a really cool experience. I know I keep using the word experience, but that's what a lot of these games are. They're more than just mindless entertainment. Like you really lose your sense of everything else around you. You just focus on being in the game world. And I think the first person perspective for this Resident Evil game lends so much of that. It really makes you feel like you're in these characters' shoes, which makes it so much scarier and more believable and really fun. All right, but that wraps up my top 10 games of the year on Xbox. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with more videos very soon.